Mr. Speaker, can I join the Prime Minister in paying tribute to Guardsman Apit Tui Zavuru, Guardsman Craig Roderick of the 1st Battalion, the Welsh Guards, and also to Warrant Officer Class 2 Leonard Thomas of the Royal Corps of Signals. They died in the most tragic of circumstances. Our hearts go out to their family and friends. I also join the Prime Minister in the remarks he made about the incident at RAF Lossiemouth. Mr. Speaker, the banking scandal of the last week has revealed traders cheating, the mis-selling of insurance products to small businesses, and comes on top of other scandals in the banking system and the continuing multi-million bonus merry-go-round. How can he convince people that a parliamentary inquiry is a better way of restoring people's confidence than a full, independent, forensic and open, judge-led inquiry?
Well, first of all, let me say, on the substance of the issue, there is no disagreement between us. I mean, this banking scandal is appalling. It is outrageous, frankly, that homeowners may have paid higher mortgage rates and small businesses may have paid higher interest rates because of spivvy and probably illegal activity in the city. People want to know that crime in our banks, crime in our financial services, will be pursued and punished like crimes on our streets. And I think as well as that, as well as people being held accountable, they want rapid action to make sure this cannot happen again. Now, in my view, the most important thing about an inquiry is that it's swift and decisive. Set up fast as possible, gets going as fast as possible, reports as fast as possible, transparent and open at every stage. That's why I favour a public parliamentary inquiry rather than a judge-led inquiry. I want us to legislate on this starting next year.
Mr. Speaker, I do understand his concerns about speed, but there are concerns also that the inquiry that is being talked about is far too narrow, focused solely on the scandal of LIBOR, when we know the problems go much wider to the culture and practices in the city. I believe, however, there is a way forward we could agree upon, that we have a two-part, judge-led inquiry that's instructed by Christmas to report on the scandal surrounding LIBOR. That's his timetable. And the second part of it looks over 12 months at the much wider area of the culture and practices within the industry. That satisfies his requirement for speed, but also the necessary requirement to look at the wider culture and practices in the city. Will he agree to my proposal?
I always look very carefully and listen very carefully to proposals from all sides of the House. Let me just make 3 points in response. First of all, on the issue of the structure of banking and the future of banking, of course we set up the Vickers inquiry, which reported, and we're going to implement the Vickers inquiry, which will for the first time separate investment banking from retail banking. It's a major step forward. Second point, the inquiry, the parliamentary inquiry we're proposing, is wider than he says. It is going to look at the culture of banking, and my honourable friend, the member for Chichester, confirmed that this morning. The third point I would make, but again, all these points need to be looked at, is clearly the Serious Fraud Office are still considering whether to launch a criminal investigation. While it's happening, there are dangers in opting for a judge-led inquiry, which might not be able to get underway. So as I say, if you want to do this as fast as possible, to get action as fast as possible, I think the way we've suggested is right. But we clearly had the vote in the House of Lords last night, where the House of Lords voted against a public inquiry. We have made time available on Thursday, which hasn't happened before, for an opposition motion to be debated and voted on, and then a government motion to be debated and voted on. Frankly, what matters more than the process is the substance, getting on with it. So I hope we can accept the results on Thursday.
Mr. Speaker, we were in exactly the same position a year ago, when initially he rejected the idea of a judge-led inquiry into the press scandal, and then he really changed his mind. In justifying that decision, he said this: "I don't believe there is any better process than an inquiry led by a judge." And he went on, with the whole thing pursued by a team of barristers who are expert at finding out the fact. Mr. Speaker, why is it right to have this judge-led approach to the scandal in the press, but wrong for the scandal in the banks?
Well, I think there is a very profound difference between the circumstances with the Leveson inquiry and the circumstances with this inquiry, because of course the Leveson inquiry followed a whole series of unsuccessful and failed inquiries. On this occasion, we've had a very successful inquiry from the Department of Justice in America and the Financial Services Authority, which has uncovered the wrongdoing. Now what's required is swift inquiry, swift action, swift legislation, and that's what you'll get from this government.
Mr. Ed Miliband.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think the Prime Minister has understood the depths of public concern, the depths of the lack of confidence there have been. Now he says both that the inquiry he proposes can be completed within essentially 4 months, but that it can go as wide as it likes. It's simply not realistic. I do say to him that I've listened to his concerns and I've proposed a way forward. I ask him again, a two-part inquiry with a judge completing on the Chancellor's timetable by Christmas on LIBOR, and then looking at the wider issues, and there are many issues about the culture and practices of the city.
I do understand the public concern about this issue, which is why I want us to get on with it. And frankly, it is this government that is going to legislate to split the banks, as Vickers suggested. It's this government that's scrapping the tripartite agreement that failed so badly under the last government. It's this government that's introduced the bank levy so the banks pay their taxes properly, and we've introduced the most transparent regime for pay and bonuses in any financial centre anywhere in the world. As evidence that this House of Commons is getting on with it, we're going to see Bob Diamond questioned upstairs by the Treasury Select Committee this afternoon. What I would say to the honourable gentleman, we are having a vote in the House of Commons tomorrow, a vote on his motion and a vote on the government motion. Clearly, if the opposition motion wins, there will be a full independent public inquiry. I would urge him to say now that if the government motion is carried, he will cooperate with a full parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think the Prime Minister gets it about the depth of public concern. Now, I do hope he will reconsider his position. But he mentions the Vickers inquiry, and he says that they are implementing the Vickers inquiry. I do say this to him. The Vickers Commission said this about a very important issue that's come out in the last 2 weeks, about the way in which high street banks have sold dodgy products to small businesses. They said that should never be allowed to happen again. But after lobbying by the banks, the government rejected this very basic recommendation of Vickers. In light of the recent scandal, with small businesses damaged, will he now U-turn and implement the Vickers recommendations in full?
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to get a lecture in getting it from a party that was in office for 13 years when all of these things took place. Now, on his specific question about the Vickers inquiry, first of all, let me repeat, this Vickers inquiry was set up by this government, will be implemented by this government, something that hadn't happened before. Under the Vickers inquiry, complex derivatives will be included in the investment bank ring fence. They won't be in the retail banks that we want to make more safe. But let me just say this to him. If he wants a quick resolution to this, he must accept the outcome of a vote in the House of Commons. I'm prepared to do that. Why isn't he?
Mr. Ed Miliband.
Mr. Speaker.
Government backbenchers who've been here for some years ought to have grasped by now that it's not the responsibility of the Leader of the Opposition to answer, so they should pipe down and try to be good boys if they can. Ed Miliband.
Mr. Speaker, if he wants a history lesson, this is what he told the City of London on the 28th of March 2008. As a free marketeer by conviction, it will not surprise you to hear me say that the problem of the past decade is too much regulation. Doesn't it say it all about the double standards of this Prime Minister? whenever these scandals happen, he is slow to act and he stands up for the wrong people. The question people are asking is who will act in the national interest rather than the party interest. His is a party bankrolled by the banks. If he fails to order a judge-led inquiry, people will come to one conclusion: he simply can't act in the national interest.
I have to say, Mr. Speaker, everybody can see what is happening here.
Order. Members must calm down. I said it to government backbenchers. I'm now saying it to opposition backbenchers. Let the answer be heard. The Prime Minister.
The party opposite want to talk about absolutely everything apart from their record of 13 years in government. I have to say, Mr. Speaker, we may have found the Higgs boson particle. Labour haven't found a sense of shame.